Right. We now come to business questions. I call the shadow leader of the House, Chris Philp.
Thank you. Can I ask the Leader of the House to provide an update on forthcoming business?
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The business for the week commencing the 29th of July will include Monday the 29th of July, second reading of the Passenger Railway Services Public Ownership Bill. Tuesday the 30th of July, second reading of the Budget Responsibility Bill. The House will rise for the summer recess at the conclusion of business on Tuesday the 30th of July and return on Monday the 2nd of September. The business for the week commencing the 2nd of September will include Monday the 2nd of September, general debate subject to be confirmed, Tuesday the 3rd of September, Committee of the Whole House and remaining stages of the Passenger Railway Services Public Ownership Bill, Wednesday the 4th of September, Committee of the Whole House and remaining stages of the Budget Responsibility Bill, Thursday the 5th of September, second reading of the Great British Energy Bill. Friday the 6th of September, the House will not be sitting.
Chris Philp, Shudley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton was brutally stabbed in Gillingham near the Brompton Barracks a few days ago. I know he will be in the thoughts of all members and will have our best wishes for a speedy recovery. Mr Speaker, I would like to extend my thanks to long-serving doorkeeper John Tamlin, who has served this House for 36 years. 4 times longer than I have even been a member of this House. He has witnessed many memorable scenes over the years and, by my calculation, has seen no fewer than 10 Prime Ministers come and go. Well, 9 come and go and 1 arrive. I am, however, optimistic that between now and next Tuesday, maybe he'll make it 10 coming and going as well. I'm sure the whole House will wish John well in his retirement after so many years' distinguished service. Thank you. Mr Speaker, we do not have a timetable for the election of select committees and other committees. Now, I know select committees can be troubling for the government sometimes. During my 5 years as a minister, I was gently roasted and sometimes violently flambéed by many select committees. I thank my honourable friend for that. But it's important we have select committees in place so backbenchers can hold the government to account. And if that is not temptation enough for the leader, let me say this. If her backbenchers have select committees to serve on, maybe they'll have less time to plot rebellions. So can the leader confirm that all select committee chairmen and members will be elected in September, and if not in September, then when? Moving on, many members have expressed concern about the resumption of UK taxpayer funding to UNRWA. UNRWA stands accused of many appalling acts, including running schools using anti-Semitic textbooks encouraging violence, the documented involvement of at least 10 UNRWA members in the 7th of October massacres, and close links between UNRWA staff and the Hamas terrorist organisation. Will the leader urgently arrange a debate on this decision in government time? And can she guarantee to the House that no taxpayer money will support directly or indirectly Hamas or any activities that encourage or facilitate terror? Mr Speaker, the government has sent mixed messages about plans to scrap or not the very reasonable 2-child cap on welfare payments, but then on Tuesday the government whipped their MPs to vote against that. There was a significant backbench rebellion less than 3 weeks after the election. Not even Theresa May managed a rebellion within 3 weeks of an election, so it's a bit of a first, and at this rate the government's majority will be gone by about Easter of next year. Look, I'm always happy to debate these issues. The Honourable Lady in the Government will actually have my support on this issue. She may not want it or welcome it, but she'll have it anyway. So can we have that debate? So not least so her own parliamentary party and backbenchers can properly debate this important issue. Mr Speaker, I understand the Chancellor next week may make a statement on public finances. Does the leader agree with what the Chancellor said during the election? You don't need to be in government to open the books because of the OBR forecasts. So will the government commit that any statement about public finances made in this House will be accompanied by that OBR forecast, since we can see from next week's business they are so keen to enshrine OBR forecasts further in law? it seems clear to me that we may be presented next week with concocted and exaggerated claims about the public finances as a pretext for tax rises. So can the leader commit now that the election promises they made, that there will be no tax rises beyond those in the Labour manifesto, will be honoured in full? Finally, Mr Speaker, the government recently announced the closure of the Bibby Stockholm barge. Will the government update the House on where those people will now be accommodated and at what cost? I also noticed the government has rebranded illegal immigration as irregular and that they merely want to control it. Can I say to the government, entering this country by small boat is illegal? It may help them to refer to Section 24 of the Immigration Act 1971 as amended if there are any doubt. The government's objective should be to completely stop illegal immigration, not merely to control it. So will she organise a debate in government time on that? And that debate, Mr Speaker, could include what the government plans to do in place of the Rwanda scheme they have just scrapped. The first flight had been due to take off yesterday. It was due to take off yesterday on the 24th of July, but the government chose to cancel it. The deterrent effect which that flight would have had would have led to a cessation of channel crossings, as all the precedents in Australia and elsewhere have demonstrated. We saw it here with the Albanian cohort last year as well. The government needlessly cancelled what would have been an effective deterrent measure. Will the government allow a vote on that policy?
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Shadow Leader, and I will join him in paying our respects to those affected by the brutal attack in Kent this week. Mr Speaker, in our last business question before the summer recess, I want to put on record my thanks to you, House staff, security staff and others for all your hard work in recent weeks. And I wish you all some kind of holiday over the recess. May I also congratulate our new deputy speakers, breaking more glass ceilings, an all-female and the most diverse lineup in our history. On the same theme, I also send congratulations to Baroness Eleanor Morgan, set to become Wales' first female First Minister. Lots of firsts there. And finally, can I also put on record my thanks to the wonderful John Tamlin, one of our fantastic doorkeepers, who's retiring after 36 years of service. The Honourable Gentleman mentioned the number of Prime Ministers under which he served. I think most of those came in the last few years of his time, which, as he said to me earlier, the last few years go a lot faster than the first early ones. Mr Speaker, I also want to address the truly shocking footage of an incident at Manchester Airport we've seen. It's right that Greater Manchester Police has referred itself to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, given the wide concern of this issue. Mr Speaker, this week we've heard many maiden speeches too. There's been lots of demand, shall we say, but it's also been really good to see the enthusiasm of many colleagues across these benches. Those speeches have told the stories of our nation, of peoples and places striving to get on, looking after and out for each other. Although I'm not sure that I can agree that every other constituency is the best in the country, because of course we all know that's actually Manchester Central. This has been a special week for us on this side of the House. After long years in opposition, we've finally been able to win some votes in support of our ambitious, bold, fully costed King's Speech programme, one to be proud of. The opportunity and responsibility of government made real. He asks about the election of select committee chairs. He will know that negotiations are ongoing between usual channels about how those chairs will be allocated, and as soon as that is completed, then of course we hope to have those elections as soon as possible. As we end our third week in government, though, it is clearer than ever before that the Conservatives failed in their responsibility and left the country in a worse state than even our worst fears. They don't like to hear it. They failed to take the tough and right choices. It's as if they knew they were going to lose the election and left the really difficult decisions for us. They don't like it, but history will show it. And that's not just my view. The National Audit Office found the NHS has been left, and I quote, in an unprecedented crisis. The Institute for Fiscal Studies said we face some of the toughest choices for generations. Their own Justice Secretary admitted they ignored prisons running at 99% capacity because it would cost them votes to take action. So I'm afraid I won't be taking his advice on the issues that he raises. He talks about redefining issues of illegal migration. I do remember the former Home Secretary redefining the backlog as a queue, I think, under the last government. But far from stopping the boats, we saw the boats that over the last year reached record highs coming over. So their plan just wasn't working, and that's why we've already reallocated those resources, and we've started returning illegal migrants already, something that his government failed to do. And he will know that, yes, we are taking action to make sure that all fiscal statements have that OBR responsibility, something that I'm not sure whether his party will be supporting next week. They had their chance to govern and left the country in a much worse state than they found it. They didn't fix the roof while the sun was shining. In fact, their whole house was built on sand. We've been left the job of rebuilding from the bottom up on shaky foundations, with most of the materials gone and the workforce depleted and demoralised. But we're getting on with the job, with more to come in coming days. Manifesto commitments realised today, turning the page on an era of sleaze and scandal. Our first bills considered next week to bring our railways back into public ownership, putting passengers, not profit, first. And to protect our economy and family finances from the Conservative Trustonomics, of which he was an author. We'll legislate for Great British Energy when Parliament returns, delivering energy security and lower bills. What a contrast to the dying days of the last government. So if he'll forgive me, I won't be taking his advice, but I will continue realising the change the country is crying out for.
Paul Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The video footage of a Greater Manchester police officer stamping on and kicking a man in Manchester Airport is truly shocking and disturbing. That man is one of my constituents in Rochdale, and I'm meeting his family later today. Our police face a very difficult job every day in keeping us all safe, but they themselves know that they have to expect the highest standards of conduct in their duties. Will the leader make time in this House to discuss the important issue of police conduct?
Can I thank my honourable friend for that very important question today? And as I said, clearly the footage is incredibly disturbing, and there's understandably a lot of concern, particularly in his constituency, because it was his constituent affected. Greater Manchester Police has said that the officer involved has been immediately suspended from all duties, and a referral has now been made to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. I will make sure that the Home Secretary has heard his question today and is in touch with him at the earliest opportunity to discuss it further.
Lib Dem spokesperson, Wera Hobhouse.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to see that the Leader of the House has survived the first rebellion of the new Parliament. Her government should take advice from one of my Bath constituents' most famous residents, Mary Shelley, and her creation Frankenstein's monster. Beware, for I'm fearless and therefore powerful. I expect the Prime Minister hopes that the new group of independent MPs he has created will not become such a monster. Scrapping the two-child benefit would lift around 250 children out of poverty. As child poverty is one of the main drivers of mental health, of mental illness, it is no surprise that young people's mental health services are now at breaking point. More than 250,000 young people are still waiting for mental health support after being referred to children and young people's mental health services in 2022-23. One of my constituents who struggles with an eating disorder has experienced 2 relapses, which they attributed to severely limited CAMS resources at the time of their need. Liberal Democrats want to ensure that when budgets are tight, support for children and young people's mental health is not pushed aside. Can we have a debate in government time on the inadequacy of child and adolescents' mental health services before it is too late? And, Mr. Speaker, may I also wish the wonderful John all the best in his retirement.
Can I thank the Honourable Lady for those points? Let me be absolutely clear. We on this side of the House are incredibly proud of the King's Speech programme laid out last week by His Majesty. By any measure, one of the most bold, ambitious programmes of any incoming government, tackling the challenges that this country faces, delivering on our commitments in our manifesto, making sure that our mission-led government is bringing about the change the country wants to see and bringing back a government of service. And it's absolutely right that those elected on a manifesto to bring that King's Speech in should vote for it overwhelmingly, as they did in Parliament this week, and I'm incredibly proud of the huge numbers of people who supported that King's Speech programme. On child poverty, these issues have been raised a number of times in recent weeks. This Labour government, as any Labour government, is absolutely committed to tackling child poverty, and not just the symptoms of child poverty, but the root causes of child poverty, whether that be early education, housing, support, or the Sure Start programme and other such measures. And that's why we've established a cross-cutting government task force to look at all of these issues, and we will be coming back regularly to this House to report on its progress.
Emma Lewell-Buck.
Speaker, many of us enjoyed watching the Euros in our local pubs, whose licence and hours were only just extended before this House rose for the general election. My private member's bill would have ensured that extensions for events of national importance are no longer dependent on Parliament's sitting. The bill passed through this place with zero objections but failed to make wash up. I know my right honourable friend likes sport and a good pint. Will she make time for my bill to become law?
Can I thank my friend for that question? Actually, as she'll know, I've become quite a lightweight, Mr. Speaker, so I'm more a spritzer girl these days than a full pint. But I know her bill was met with wide support in the last Parliament. The private member's bill ballot will be coming up straight after recess. I hope she secures a spot in that, and if not, I'm very happy to talk to her about how we can take some of these matters forward in our future legislative programme.
Andrew Rosindell.
I welcome the Leader of the House to her place. She will have noticed this week we are celebrating county flags. Parliament Square is incredibly wonderfully decorated with the flags of the historic counties from across these islands. Will she commit the government to continue with that tradition, but also work to enhance, cherish the culture of our magnificent historic counties across our United Kingdom?
Well, he makes a really important point, and the identity that many people feel from the counties from which they come should continue to be celebrated and nourished. And I know that as long as we have the Speaker that we have, who is a great Lancastrian and very much of his county, that we, I'm sure, in this House will continue to celebrate the great contribution our counties make.
Polly Billington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our coastal communities, such as mine in East Thanet, have been let down for far too long, with poor public services, lack of infrastructure, made even worse by a shortage of high-quality, well-paid jobs. On top of that, one of their biggest assets, the sea and its environment, has been trashed as a consequence of Tory neglect and chaos, making sustainable economic recovery even harder. But this has not deterred my constituents across Margate, Broadstairs and Ramsgate from channeling their energies into enterprises in hospitality, tourism, as well as the vital creative industries. Will my right honourable friend arrange for us to have a debate in this House about the way this government's regional growth strategy will address the long-term challenges and opportunities of our coastal communities, with a special consideration of how the visual and performing arts can drive economic...
Can I say, this will be being cut off at about 11:45. If we're going to get it running, we're going to have to help each other, trying to get shorter questions, and I'm sure the Leader is going to assist with quicker answers. Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank her for that great question, and I'm sure the important contribution that coastal towns make to this House and all the new members that represent those areas would make a really good topic for an adjournment or Westminster Hall debate after recess.
Oh, Black.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Iran represents the biggest threat to peace in the Middle East. We're controlling the Houthis, who attack British shipping, controlling Hamas, that has caused all the war in Gaza, and Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah. In opposition, the government promised, and it was the settled will of this House, that the IRGC should be prescribed in its entirety, its assets sequestrated and used for the benefit of the Iranian people. Will the leader arrange for a debate in government time to ensure that this becomes the policy of this new administration and we get on with that job, which will be welcomed across the world?
Can I thank him for that question? And he's right, we did raise these issues a number of times when we were on the opposite side of this House. I will make sure, I know the Foreign Secretary's already been to the House recently to update on a number of issues, and I know he's got plans to continue to update the House. I will make sure he's heard what he said today and he provides some answers to that important point.
Carolyn Harris.
Mr. Speaker, resolving a small community in my constituency of Swansea East and Neath with a massive heart is today filled with pride for Dan Jervis, part of the GB swim team. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating not just Dan, but all our contestants for the GB Paris Olympics? They fill us with pride and they fill us with joy. So would she join me in congratulating them all?
I strongly support what my friend has just said. We all want to wish the Team GB the very best in the forthcoming Olympics in Paris, particularly Dan as well and the rest of the swimming team, but all our competing athletes. We wish them all the very best.
Sir Roger Gale.
Mr. Speaker, while in opposition, the present administration made some efforts to criticise the then Conservative government's record on animal welfare. The King's Speech, of which the Right Honourable Lady has indicated that she is so proud, contains not one word relating to animal welfare. Was that a deliberate admission, or was it a careless and disinterested oversight? And when might we have a bill to outlaw the proceeds of trophy hunting?
Well, I'm glad to answer that question. He will be aware that outlawing trophy hunting was absolutely in our manifesto, which we've been resoundingly elected to deliver. We have set out our King's Speech for this first session. It's not for the whole Parliament, it's for this first session. Given how much we have got to do and we need to do, we've had to prioritise what we're doing in this first session, especially around delivering on our missions and those first steps we promised the country we would deliver. But I'm sure that that will come forward in due course.
In Lavery.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. St Bartholomew's Church in Newbiggin-by-the-Sea in my constituency is a Grade 1 listed building. It's a beautiful church. It's in serious danger of sliding into the North Sea because of coastal erosion. Sadly, the last government only allowed funding for sea defences to protect residential properties. Can we have a debate in government time to discuss how we can change this rule before this lovely church and some of its former residents slide into the North Sea?
Well, I'm very sorry to hear about that historic church in his constituency, and he's right to say that coastal erosion is one of the key challenges that communities like his and many others face, and that's one of the issues that my colleague, the Secretary of State for DEFRA, is prioritising in his work around the Flood Resilience Task Force and his work around coastal community resilience. So I will make sure that he's heard his comments today and gets him a full reply.
Dave Doogan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State for the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero was trumpeting that 76% of the electorate are right behind GB Energy. And why wouldn't they be? Why wouldn't they want a state-owned energy company like Ørsted or Vattenfall or Equinor delivering for people across these islands? But it's not that, is it? It's a cynical snake oil exercise to gift wrap a department that already exists and won't deliver energy across these islands at all. Can we have a debate on government time about why GB Energy is nothing short of smoke and mirrors?
Well, I strongly disagree with my friend's question there. Great British Energy, not only is it very popular, it's very popular for a reason, because it's going to transform our ability to produce clean energy, which is much needed in this country, so that we are no longer reliant on imported fossil fuels, which are subject to global energy spikes, as we have seen. We are leading a transformation to a clean energy superpower by 2030, of which Great British Energy is absolutely core to delivering that mission. He will be aware that there will be a debate tomorrow on this issue, and we will have second reading of that bill when we return, and I'm sure he can hear then how wrong he is about his conclusions on Great British Energy.
Dick Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the last month, 2 men in my constituency of Rother Valley have taken their own lives. Both had families, both were well-known and respected figures in their communities, and both will be sorely missed. Will my right honourable friend guarantee a debate on mental health services for men and how the NHS can work with local groups such as those in my community, Andy's Man Club in Maltby, the Learning Community in Dinnington, and Better Together in Kiverton Park?
Can I thank him for that question? And sadly, men are 3 times more likely to die from suicide than women, and it is a great killer of young men in this country. That's why we gave such a big chunk of the King's speech to tackling mental health, including modernisation of the Mental Health Act, and are bringing forward a cross-cutting mental health approach, which I'm sure the Secretary of State will be updating this House with shortly.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the Leader of the House to her position? On the day of the dissolution of the last Parliament, the last government awarded millions of pounds to funding for accessibility at our more remote train stations, including Swanwick and Hedge End in my constituency. Can the Leader of the House confirm that that funding will remain in place? And can we have a debate about accessibility at our more remote train stations in this country?
As one of the few Labour people here on that day, I remember that well, and he will be aware that the economic inheritance of this government is a lot more challenging than we feared, and that some of the commitments that were made by the previous government were actually not funded. But obviously we take very seriously these commitments made to local communities, and I'm sure there will be updates to this House as soon as they're available.
Rachel Blake.
Mr. Speaker, will the Leader of the House acknowledge the risk to the falling school roll in the cities of London and Westminster? The Leader of the House will be aware that the cities of London and Westminster have some excellent local primary schools, many of whom are just a few minutes walk away from this place. But the sustainability of local primary schools is at risk due to London's housing crisis, and will the Leader of the House allow a debate on the long-term sustainability of local primary schools and their vital importance to central inner city communities?
Well, I welcome my honourable friend to her place here as the Labour MP for where we are today. And she raises a really important matter, and it's one that should be covered by our Children and Wellbeing Bill. It was announced in the King's Speech, looking at some issues around admission and place planning and giving local authorities more ability to do that than they currently have today. She will be aware that the next education questions are due not long after we get back after recess, so she may want to raise this important matter then as well.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the new FCA rules in relation to access to cash. One of the key things that it sets out is the fact that banks should not close their branches before an assessment has taken place and those new alternatives have been put in place. In Cooper, we've already seen the closure of the Bank of Scotland. We've seen problems over the summer in relation to replenishment of the remaining cash machines. Can we have a debate on government time about these FC rules and how we ensure that communities who have already lost their services do get the replacement placement assessments that they're supposed to get?
Well, can I thank the Honourable Lady for that important question? And I know from sitting in these sessions for many weeks in the last Parliament, it was a topic that she raised consistently. And many of us had this raised during the election campaign, the disappearance of banks from our high streets. That's why this government is committed to banking hubs right across the country and to a coherent plan to town centre regeneration. And I will consider her request for a debate and pass that on to the relevant minister.
Matt Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's the end of the school year, and I'd like to place on record my thanks to all the teachers and governors, not just in Warwick and Leamington, but across the country, for what has been a really tough year and the work that they've done. At the beginning of the academic year, certain schools were hit by RAC, and it's impacted greatly on the education provision for so many in our community. So can we have a debate, please, at some point to talk about the impacts of RAC and asbestos on children's education and what mitigations can be offered?
Well, can I join him in thanking teachers right across the country for what they have done this academic year. Given my new duties, Mr. Speaker, I did miss my own child's very last day at primary school on Tuesday, so I would particularly like to thank his teachers who I didn't get a chance to see on that day. Yeah, I'm a really bad mum, I'm afraid. Just goes with the terrain. But he makes a really important point about the RAC that remains in our schools. This is one of the scandals of the previous government that was left undealt with, and I know that my friend, the Secretary of State for Education, is looking incredibly closely at these issues and will update the House in due course.
Let's have a mother, Alicia Cairns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by saying what a joy it is to see the Leicestershire flag flying outside Parliament, which I secured for my county after 1,000 years without one. But moving to Lincolnshire, the government is right to build more houses. I represent 3 counties. However, it is crucial in that process that we make sure that councils hold developers and water companies to account. In Corby Glen in Lincolnshire, there has now been a stink for well over a year, and yet the Labour-run Rainbow Council at South Stephen refused to meet with the parish council or local members of the community. So can I ask for a debate in government time on how, with all the new house building, which is absolutely right, we will ensure that house builders and developers are held to account by councils and that we stop the stink in Corby Glen?
Well, can I thank her for that question? She raised an important matter. She will know that this government is unashamedly pro-house building, but that is not a free pass for developers. We want to see local plans that are developed locally, that are holistic and strategic, considering all issues, not just housing, but infrastructure that sits alongside that. And it's local plans designed by local people that we want to see speeded up, and hopefully that would help resolve some of the issues with the stench that she has in her own constituency.
Rosie Writing.
I want to welcome the Leader of the House to her place. I recently visited Kettering General Hospital and had the privilege of meeting the staff there. But during my visit, I was informed that the maternity ward has RAC, and patients who give birth will have to be transported outside to another wing of the hospital. Will the Leader of the House make time for debate on the issue of RAC in public service buildings?
Well, as we've just heard, this is a very important issue to a number of colleagues across the House, and we are extremely concerned about the dire state of the NHS estate and how that is currently in. RAC is at the top of the Department for Health's priorities. She will be aware that once the presence of RAC is confirmed at a hospital site, it does join NHS England's National RAC programme, which has got a considerable pot of money in that, and I will ensure that she gets an update on her hospital and that this House is updated on RAC in NHS hospitals in general.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, in welcoming the Leader to her place and initially making quite clear that I'm sure she's a very good mum, actually, not a bad mum. Can I just say, Mr. Speaker, that the time the government abandoned its plan to process illegal migrants offshore, they offered no real practical alternative, as the Shadow Leader has said. Now, I know that many of those arrivals are genuine asylum seekers and they need to be treated accordingly, but many are not. And the British people are sick and tired of people arriving here illegally, not irregularly, illegally, and not being dealt with appropriately. So will she tell us when the government intend to act? What's their timescale? What's the numbers they intend to change? Enough is enough. The British people have had enough of our borders being breached with impunity.
Can I thank you? I mean, my daughter who's here today might have a different view on whether I'm a good mum or a bad mum, but that's another point. But look, I think with great respect to the honourable gentleman, I do think it is a bit rich of them to be asking us of these questions today, given that they presided over the worst rise in illegal migration we have ever seen in this country. We have already established the Border Security Command. We've already reallocated resources and made use of the plane to return those to Vietnam who are here illegally. He will know that it was over £700 million were allocated to the Rwanda scheme, and for that amount of money, all they managed to do was get 4 volunteers to Rwanda. So we've got a plan to tackle the criminal gangs, to get these numbers down, a plan that we are getting on with delivering.
Liz Twist.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first of all, can I take the opportunity to thank voters in the new constituency of Blaydon and Consett for putting their trust in me. It's truly a privilege. Now, one of the exciting things about the boundary changes has been getting to know the fantastic small businesses and community organisations on the County Durham side of my constituency, including Glenroyd House, the Foundation for Good, the Hub, St Mary Magdalene Church and many others, to name just a few. So could we have a debate in government time on the vital contribution of community organisations to our local communities?
Well, can I congratulate the Honourable Lady on her re-election, and I'm sure her new constituents will be as delighted as her old ones were with how assiduous a constituency MP she is. And I think the topic that she raises makes a very good matter for an adjournment debate or a Westminster Hall debate, and I wish her the very best in getting that through the door.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I congratulate the Leader of the House on her new position? And could I ask her if she could bring forward, or ensure is brought forward, a statement on the International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice decisions relating to Israel and Gaza, and whether the UK government will withdraw its objections to any rulings they've made so that it can go ahead and be part of international law, which the Prime Minister has said the current UK government is fully signed up to all aspects of international law and, of course, the European Convention on Human Rights.
Well, can I thank the right honourable gentleman for that question? He's absolutely right. This government is completely clear that our commitment to international law is resolute, and we are following the necessary processes in that regard. And the Foreign Secretary has made clear that he is undertaking a comprehensive review of Israel's compliance with international humanitarian law, and he's also made clear that he will update the House as soon as that process is complete, and I hope that will be soon.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Leader of the House grant a debate in government time to consider the civil rights situation in Bangladesh, where violent crackdowns on protests have led to killings of hundreds and the draconian communications blackout that is causing immense concern to my Bangladeshi communities and the wider community?
Can I thank the Honourable Lady for that question? The Government is deeply concerned by the violence in recent days in Bangladesh. The loss of life is unacceptable, and the right to protest must be protected and restored. So I will make sure that the Foreign Secretary has heard her question today and is able to update her and the House at the first opportunity.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
Early in this Parliament, can we have a debate on trust in politics and politicians? Newly minted ministers are already hopping on and off the Airbus A321 airplane, the same plane that was condemned in 2022 by the then opposition as obscene, brazen and disgusting. In that debate, will the government be able to explain how that jaw-dropping show of double standards and hypocrisy is compatible with restoring trust?
Well, I'm glad he raises that point, because we're actually having a debate this afternoon on restoring trust in politicians and politics, as this government brings forward its manifesto commitment to take action on the sleaze and scandal and cronyism we saw in the last Parliament, and we want to turn the page on that decisively, as we were beginning to do today. He will know that the travel arrangements of the Prime Minister are security matters, and I'm sure he'll respect that.
Antonio Banks.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Many residents in my constituency of Tipton, Wednesbury and Coseley are sick of the noise and disruption of illegal off-road motorbikes. During the election campaign, we promised to change the rules so that the police could crush illegal off-road bikes that they seize within 48 hours, something the Tories failed to do for 14 years. Can the Leader of the House give an update on when these measures may be brought forward and when members may have an opportunity to discuss actions to cut antisocial behaviour?
Well, what a fantastic question, and I know from my own constituency that noisy off-road bikes speeding around local streets and intimidating residents are a nightmare, and I know that's particularly prevalent in the Friar Park area of her own constituency. As she rightly says, the government is committed to give police the powers they need to crush nuisance dirt and quad bikes within days of being seized, and that legislation will be brought forward in due course.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Tomorrow I will be visiting Scunthorpe Steelworks, where hundreds of my Briggingham constituents work. Many more hundreds are reliant on the supply chain throughout northern Lincolnshire. I'm aware of negotiations that were taking place between the previous government, and I know the new Secretary of State will want to reassure the workforce who are very anxious about their future employment situation. Could the Leader arrange for the Secretary of State to come to the House before the recess to provide that reassurance?
Can I thank him for that question? This government is absolutely committed to UK steel production, and particularly in Scunthorpe and in Port Talbot and other parts of the UK. He will know we have a big plan for the green transition of steel, and we are bringing forward that Industrial Strategy Council and other measures that will support the long-term future of British steel in this country. The next questions for business and trade are shortly after we get back after the recess, and I'm sure he'll want to raise those issues there.
Debbie Abrahams.
Can I associate myself with the remarks of my neighbour, the member for Rochdale, about the appalling incident at Manchester International Airport yesterday? Following on from that, can I ask my right honourable friend, first of all, congratulate her and her team on their appointments, but to ask my right honourable friend, in terms of having a debate in government time, specifically on the cross-government mission to reduce the appalling health inequalities that we've inherited and that particularly are prevalent in my constituency of Oldham.
Well, can I welcome my good friend and neighbour to her place, and I'm sure she will be a regular contributor to these and other questions. I think she topped the league in my region as the member who contributed most in the last Parliament in this place, so I know she will be very vocal on a number of issues. She's right, this is reducing health inequality is absolutely core to our health mission, and the Secretary of State for Health, I think, set out some of those priorities in health orals earlier this week, and we will have further debates on that matter in due course.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Around 3 years ago, two of my constituents, Paul and Joanne Snodden, bought a new home in a residential park. The park turned out to have no licence, and now unable to sell apart from to the park owner, they stand to lose £100,000. Park owners often impose punitive increases in pitch fees, and there are complaints of failures of basic maintenance. Can we have a debate on how to toughen laws and enforcement regarding residential parks?
Well, can I thank him for that important question on behalf of his constituents, and I'm sure there'll be many other colleagues across the House who will share similar stories. It sounds to me like that is a really good topic of a Westminster Hall or adjournment debate in this place, and I'm sure he would get lots of support if he wanted to put in for that.
Jacob Collier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is easier to find a needle in a haystack than it is for my constituents in Burton and Uttoxeter to find an NHS dentist. Many have told me that they have to travel miles just to get an appointment, are forced to go private, or simply don't bother at all. Can the Leader of the House tell me when the Health Secretary will be updating the House on his work to solve this crisis?
Well, can I welcome him to his place as the new MP for Burton and Uttoxeter. He raises a significant issue of importance to other colleagues. Dentistry and access to dentistry came up all the time in the general election campaign for many of us, and that's why this government is committed to providing 700,000 additional urgent dental NHS dental appointments. And I know from my own dentist that he's very positive about the mood music that's been coming from this government and their action on dentistry.
Sarah Dye.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I congratulate the Leader of the House to her position. The Olympic ceremony is happening tomorrow, and soon we will be inspired by these athletes' amazing feats. And I congratulate two of my constituents in Glastonbury and Somerton who will be representing Team GB. However, too many girls face barriers to access sport. So can I ask the Leader of the House if we can have a debate in government time on how we can encourage teenage girls to access sport and continue that into adulthood?
Hear, hear. Well, can I thank her for that? And of course, we wish Team GB well. I was wondering whether her leader might be entering some of the water sports divisions, all sports really. Yeah, I'm not sure how well he'll fare, but anyway, I'm sure he'll give it a good go. But look, getting more women involved in young girls involved in sports is absolutely critical. And one of the first actions of this government has been for the Secretary of State of Education to ask for a curriculum review to ensure that there is more access to sport and PE for every child across their time in school. And there will be further measures coming forward in due course.
Kimberley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like many constituencies, in Spen Valley, we're intensely proud of our many different towns and villages, all with their own unique identities. My constituents and I want to preserve the amenities that are at the heart of those communities, like the Town Hall in Cleckheaton or the libraries in Murfield and Kirkheaton. Does she agree with me that as part of the very welcome devolution revolution this Labour government will deliver, we must ensure that every corner of our country is included in this mission of national renewal?
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with her point. Every town and village contributes greatly to their local community's life, and it's not just about libraries or banking facilities, but it's the whole range of services, and also tackling issues like rural and village crime as well. And that's why this government is committed to looking at all of those issues, but also giving local communities the power to determine the future of their own towns and villages.
Jim Shallam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank very much the Leader of the House for the opportunity to ask a question regarding the necessity of safeguarding freedom of religion or belief. I would like, as I've already indicated to the Leader of the House, that I'd like to turn our attention to Mexico. In April, more than 150 Baptist Protestants in Hidalgo state in Mexico were forcibly displaced after electricity was cut off, their church vandalised and access to their homes blocked. The inaction of local government officials has prolonged the suffering of these families who currently face exuberant fines based on their conversion to Protestantism. Will the Leader of the House join me in condemning these violations of freedom of religion or belief in the Hidalgo state? And further, will the Honourable Lady ask the FCDO to raise the issue with their counterparts in Mexico?
Well, I'm pleased to see the Honourable Gentleman in his place today. I expect nothing less, and I was also pleased to see that during his adjournment debate this week he was intervened on many times, so I'm pleased to see that. But I've heard him many times in this House and in these sessions raise the issue of freedom of religion or belief, and he will know that this government is committed to continue support those measures, and we will continue to champion them in government.
Blair McDougall.
My constituency, Mr Speaker, is almost unique in this House at having both a large Jewish and Muslim population living side by side as friends, schoolmates, workmates and neighbours, a sign of, I think, hope in pretty troubled times around the world. However, many constituents from both communities have been in touch about the rising tide of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and the impact upon them. And I wonder if she'll make time available so that this House can make clear our opposition to the hatred that stains too many of our communities.
Well, can I thank the honourable gentleman for that important point? And this government absolutely stands steadfast against all hatred, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, which unfortunately we have seen on the rise in recent months. He'll be aware that Home Office questions, which is perhaps a good place to raise these matters, will take place next week, and he might want to raise these with the Home Secretary then.
Alex Blandinger.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Town centres in constituencies like mine in Halesowen have increasingly struggled over the last 14 years. So I was pleased to see measures in the King's Speech to support our high streets. Businesses in my constituency are also interested in an update on the Levelling Up Fund for Halesowen Town Centre regeneration, as promised by the last government. So can we have a debate on how we support our high streets? Thank you.
Well, I'm sure his constituents will thank him greatly for taking this opportunity to raise this matter. The government is giving careful consideration to a number of these levelling up grants, which we are keen to follow through. He will be aware, though, that we have inherited a much worse difficult economic situation than we foresaw, and that actually a number of commitments that the previous government had made, there wasn't actually the funding there to follow through on them. But this government will do its very best to support places like Halesowen with the additional funding it needs.
Dr Rupert.
Speaker, recent days have seen protests in Rome, Paris, my right honourable friends, City of Manchester and in Trafalgar Square over what's been going on in Bangladesh, a three-figure number of student protesters killed. We don't know how many because they've turned the internet off. I wonder if I can press again. Can we have an urgent government statement on our position on this? Because I didn't come out of the FCDO ballot for Tuesday, and we have a historic, unique role in this situation.
Well, she raises an important point, and as I said earlier, we are deeply concerned about the violence in recent days, and the loss of life is unacceptable. The right to protest must be restored, and also access to the internet should also be restored, and we urge all sides to have restraint in this regard. I know the Foreign Secretary and Foreign Office ministers would want to update the House. Obviously, we are running out of time ahead of recess, but all possible steps will be taken to ensure that these important updates are brought before the recess.
Thank you,
Mr Speaker. The performance of the previous government in relation to the rollout of electric vehicle charging was woeful. We are way behind where we need to be. Would the leader consider a debate about how we remove some of the bureaucratic barriers to electric vehicle charging rollout so that we can get to where we need to be and remove as many petrol and diesel vehicles from our roads?
Well, he raises an incredibly important point, and he's absolutely right that this government's mission to achieve transition to a clean energy superpower by 2030, which is incredibly ambitious, will be limited by the rollout of the necessary infrastructure to electric charging vehicles, and he's right to raise that. I know there is a debate tomorrow on some of these matters, and hopefully he will get the opportunity to raise them there.
Deirdre Costigan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Under the last Labour government, my constituency of Ealing Southall saw every single ward have 6 dedicated police and community support officers keeping people safe on the streets. But under 14 years of a Conservative government, we're now in a situation where we have 10,000 less police officers on our streets, leading in my constituency to an open drugs market on Gurrananick Road in Southall, and to similar issues of crime and antisocial behaviour on West Ealing Broadway. Will she, the Leader of the House, make time for a debate on how we can bring forward as quickly as possible this government's very welcome plans to recruit 13,000 extra police and community support officers and to bring back neighbourhood policing so my constituents can again feel safe on their streets.
Well, that's a very important question. She's absolutely right. Bringing back neighbourhood policing is a key task for the Home Secretary. It was part of our manifesto and first steps commitments to this country that we would recruit an additional 13,000 neighbourhood police officers. Steps towards that have already been undertaken, but they also form a key plank of the crime and policing bill announced in the King's Speech, which will be coming before this House in due course.
Sarah Edwards.
Greenacres School in my constituency is currently sinking. 5 years ago, it applied to the Risk Protection Arrangement Scheme after concerns about drainage. It is now closed since March, and pupils and parents are obviously rightly worried about the future of their school. So could I ask for a statement about what the government is doing to review whether schemes like this are fit for purpose and whether or not the rest of our school buildings are at risk from not just RAC but other conditions?
Well, I'm really sorry to hear about the school in her constituency, which is in such a state of disrepair. I'm afraid this is a familiar story, as our schools' estates are in a very poor state and are in need of serious investment, for which I'm afraid at the moment there isn't sufficient funding available. But I know that these will be of concern to the Secretary of State for Education, and she may want to raise these in education questions which are coming up after the recess.
Catherine Atkinson.
Latest victim of a trend in the publication of unflattering depictions of towns or cities for clickbait. Can I invite journalists to visit with me the Museum of Making, the Quad Cultural Hub, Dada Creative Centre for Dance, take a boat trip up to Darley Abbey, have lunch at Bird's, dinner at Darley's, and see the progress the Labour Council is making on Becketwell Performance Venue, the Market Hall and the Guildhall Theatre. When all that regeneration work is done, in the interests of fairness, which should repeat their survey of UK cities, may we have a debate about city centre regeneration?
Yay. Well, can I say Derby North sounds like a thoroughly lovely place to go and visit, and I will look forward to doing that at some point soon. And she makes a very strong case, and the issue of town centre regeneration, which has come up today many times, I think would be a very worthy subject for a forthcoming Westminster Hall or general debate in this place.
Abdul Hussain.
I've been inundated with messages of concern and upset from my constituents following the horrific images that have come from Manchester Airport. I myself am deeply concerned with what can only be described as a complete abuse of power. Again, will the leader join me in assuring the general public that we should never have to witness such scenes of violence in a country like ours, where no authority is above the law, and that all necessary measures must be taken to investigate how and why such an incident arose, and for the general public to be reassured generally?
Well, can I thank you for that question? And as a Manchester MP myself, I was absolutely disturbed by that footage as well. And understandably, it's caused a lot of public concern, and it was truly shocking to see. Other colleagues have raised that here on the floor of the House this morning, and as I said previously, Greater Manchester Police has said that the officer involved has been immediately suspended from duties, and a referral has now been made to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, and that's absolutely the right thing to do, and let's hope we don't see scenes like that again.
Chris MacDonald.
The firm Johnson Matthey in my constituency has joined with others in the UK metal sector to form the Back British Metals initiative, aimed at attracting more private sector investment into the metal sector. I wonder if my right honourable friend might be able to find some time for a debate on the Back British Metals initiative, and also how we can attract further investment.
Well, I know from previously working with the honourable gentleman, who I know is going to make a fantastic contribution to this House as the MP for Stockton North, that he's incredibly committed to these issues. And this government will look forward to working with him on a backing British metals campaign that I hope he will take forward in coming weeks.
Rachel Hopkins.
In my new constituency of Luton South and South Bedfordshire, people have told me they feel let down by the lack of local bus service provision, be it Wigmore in the east or Caddington and villages in the west. So will the Leader of the House provide parliamentary time for a debate on the government's exciting plan to provide new powers to local leaders to franchise local bus services and lift the ban on municipal ownership?
Well, she's absolutely right. Local bus services, I'm afraid, in most parts of this country are woeful because they are often privately run and desperately underfunded. And that's why this government was so committed to ensuring that the bus reform bill announced in the King's Speech was in that King's Speech and will be brought forward to this House in due course. And I think will revolutionise bus services in her constituency and across the country.
Joe White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Leader of the House allow time for a debate on the failure of Conservative-controlled Nottinghamshire County Council to build the desperately needed expansion of Outward Grange Portland Secondary School in Worksop, despite the fact that I got £4.5 million worth of seal monies from Bassett Royal District Council in April last year when I was Deputy Leader?
Well, she raises a very important matter, and building new schools and meeting school need in her local area is absolutely critical to this government's mission of making sure there is opportunity for all, and the priority of this our Education Secretary. So I'm sure she will take every opportunity to raise that in the education questions that we have coming up, and if not, I will make sure she gets a good reply from the Minister.
Annalise Midgley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the recent tragic shooting that took place on the streets of my constituency, can the Leader confirm that there will be time to debate the issue of violent crime with a real focus on the root causes to tackling gun crime in our society?
Can I welcome her to her place, and I'm sorry to hear of the very tragic circumstances in her constituency. This government is committed to tackling issues around firearms, not just the symptoms but the root causes, as she says, and there will be ample time to discuss these matters, and of course there is Home Office questions next week where she may want to raise these matters further.
Rachel Maskell.
Mr. Speaker, hundreds of thousands of people will be visiting my fantastic city of York over this summer. However, many of them will be staying in short-term holiday lets, Airbnbs, 1 in 10 in my city centre. Can we have a debate about how this government will not just register Airbnbs, but licence them so local authorities control their housing stock?
Well, she raises a very important issue which I know affects many cities like my own and her own as well, which is why this government has that manifesto commitment to look at these issues and take action soon as we possibly can on these matters, and I'm sure she will be able to raise those with the Housing, Communities and Local Government Secretary of State in oral questions as soon as we come back on the 2nd of September.
McIntyre.
Mr. Speaker, one of the biggest issues facing my residents in Gloucester is the crippling cost of living crisis. The legacy of the last government was sky-high energy bills, low-paid jobs and eye-watering mortgage hikes. Will my right honourable friend make time for a debate on what the new government will do to tackle the cost of living crisis and deliver the change that my residents in Gloucester voted for?
Well, he's absolutely right. Under the last Parliament, we saw living standards falling for the first time in our history, and that's why many people voted Labour at the last election, because they want change and they want their living standards restored. We have a wide range of policies to that end, and he might want to raise some of these issues next week in the Fiscal Responsibility Bill, because of course it was the last government, which the shadow leader was the chief secretary to the Treasury at the time, that crashed the economy and sent mortgage rates sky high.
Alistair Strathern.
Speaker, from Stockport to Shefford, parents, pupils and schools alike have been let down
by my council's failure to finally deliver a long-promised 3 to 2-tier school transition. Given the challenges the council is clearly having in delivering this on its own, will the Secretary of State for Education make a statement about how the DfE can best support them to finally get this over the line?
I will arrange for the Secretary of State to address that very important matter that relates to his constituency and the transition that's needed from a 3-tier to a 2-tier education system.
Dr Becky Cooper.
Speaker, could I ask the Leader of the House to find time for a debate on the long overdue need to update gambling regulations? The most recent legislation is from 2005, long before the growth of online and mobile gambling opportunities. In my own constituency of Worthing West, I recently met Gambling with Lives and heard some heartbreaking stories of people who have lost their loved ones to this terrible addictive illness. The law should protect children and vulnerable adults with more effective regulation. So will you please allow a debate in government time on this?
Well, can I thank her for that important question? I too have met many of the families from Gambling with Harms, and the stories are utterly tragic, and they make sure that we redouble our efforts, as we are committed to do, to reducing gambling-related harms. And she will be aware that there are a number of measures that were proposed by the previous government, which we are looking at taking forward.
Chris Webb.
Last week, Plan International UK launched a report that revealed Blackpool was the second toughest place for a girl in the UK. The report detailed that place-based inequalities for girls aged 16 to 24 face including sexual assault, child poverty, health and academic attainment. Going forward, I'll champion them as they are at the heart of the action of gender inequality and deprivation. But will the Leader allow a debate in government time to discuss how we can support girls and young women in Blackpool and across our country?
Well, he's absolutely right to raise the difficulties that young women in his constituency of Blackpool South face, and that's why this government is committed to a number of measures that I hope will over time make sure that they are no longer face those difficulties. We want to halve violence against women and girls. We have a task force now on a child poverty strategy across government, and of course our Opportunity for All mission will drive opportunity for everybody in every part of the country, including Blackpool South.
Natasha Irons.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, knife crime and youth violence is a disease that has cast a devastating shadow not just across constituencies like mine in Croydon East, but across communities in this entire country. With 49,000 recorded offences involving a knife last year, this government's commitment to not just getting these lethal blades off our streets by banning zombie knives finally, something the previous government refused to do, but by also tackling the complex causes of violent crime by producing a Sure Start service for child service for teenagers. These initiatives are more welcome now more than ever. Can the Leader of the House allow time for a statement that will outline the work as this begins and how grassroots organisations can plug into the work that's happening? Thank you.
Well, can I thank her for that important question? She's absolutely right. We need to tackle the causes and the symptoms. We do have a commitment to tackling knife crime through banning zombie knives and other matters as well. But she's also right. We need to take a look at the root causes as well. And that's why we have plans for a Young Futures programme, which I know the Home Secretary and the Mayor of London discussed that and all knife crime related issues yesterday. And she may want to be in for Home Office questions next week, where I'm sure she'll get an update from the Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Areas like mine in Lower Stofton Beccles have become so-called dental deserts in the last 14 years. We've got one of the lowest numbers of dentists in the east of England, and none were accepting new patients in 2022. I've welcomed the range of measures that the Health Secretary has outlined, but can I also ask for a debate on this pressing topic?
Well, can I welcome her to her place? She and I were involved in Young Labour together only a few years ago, I feel. So it's great to see her finally in this place where she belongs. And she raises a really important matter of NHS dentistry and the difficulty people have in getting an NHS appointment, which I know is particularly acute in Norfolk. And that's why this government is committed to a rescue plan and providing another 700,000 NHS dentist appointments, which I hope will relieve that acuteness in Norfolk.
Adam Jogi.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I just send my best wishes to John as well as he approaches his retirement. I first met him in 2009 when I was a member of the UK Youth Parliament. I'm now here, he's now leaving, but best wishes to you, John. Newcastle and Lyme is home to many veterans and their families. They are courageous and good people. So can we have a debate, please, Leader, on how we can give our veterans the support they deserve and the appreciation they've earned?
Leader. Well, can I join him in thanking John again, who's sat through this session for one last time as a doorkeeper, and he raises important issues around veterans and supporting them. He will know that the Veterans Minister has now been moved back into the Defence Department. They do have questions coming up after recess, and hopefully he'll be able to raise those matters then.
Final question, Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I welcome the Leader of the House to her place, who takes over the reign from my predecessor. Mr. Speaker, in my constituency of Portsmouth North, houses of multiple occupancy, or more commonly known as HMOs, are turning family homes to 9 or in some cases 10-bedroom houses. As one of the most densely populated cities in Europe, family homes into HMOs is a sticking plaster over the urgent need for affordable, social and council homes in our city. Could the Leader of the House look into when we could debate in the House within the up-and-coming debates on planning reform to give more powers to local government to stop family homes being turned into HMOs?
Well, can I welcome the new member for Portsmouth North to the sessions? We did have a different member for Portsmouth North standing at this dispatch box in previous sessions, so I warmly welcome her here today. She raises a very important matter that I know will be of importance to other colleagues. Local authorities do have planning powers to limit the proliferation of HMOs, but I know from my own constituency how difficult those powers are to exercise, and I think she would be well within her rights to raise these matters with the Deputy Prime Minister, who I think will be here before the recess on an update on some of these issues.
I know members will be quite disappointed. That's why it's better if we can speed up questions and answers. What I would say is those who are disappointed, I know it's a little while to the next business questions, but I do have a list of those who didn't get in. So please rest assured we are going to try and look after everybody. Right, I'll let the front benches clear.